Recording in progress.
Okay, there we go. So welcome back to Think Differently. So, and Happy New Year. I don't think I said that. Happy New Year to everybody joining live and on the replay. So today we're talking about the mindset to bring into 2025 to create the exact business results that you want. And I kind of want to preface this with, this is a mindset you can adopt any time of year. This is not actually like unique to the new year, but I find that it really serves you to start off the new year this way. So that's why I chose this one. I had a couple of other topics that I was sort of playing with, which one is going to be the one that I choose. But I think this one really serves you now. And then my encouragement to you is come back and watch this later in the year, or come back to your notes, or just put a sticky on your note, whatever like major piece comes out of this for you as far as insights, come back to it, because it's always just something to keep you grounded and focused on really like North Star, what's your most important thing going on in your business, and how to kind of just stay focused on that, because we just sort of start to lose it over the year, right? And this is also something that I talk to clients a lot. So it's really one mindset and one belief system, and I'm going to tell you what it is in just a second. You don't have to like wait very long. But there's 4 parts. So as you're listening to this, of these 4 parts, you're probably, I guess what I'm trying to encourage you to do is to see where your work is within these 4 parts of the belief system. Because I might start to say number 1 and you're like, yeah, I got it, I'm good. Okay, please don't leave, hold on. Because all of these build together to create a belief system that I really think serves people when we're doing big things like, running small businesses by yourself, little tiny little thing like that. So again, listen to how they connect to one another, especially if one of them you've like, totally got it. And then also you'll see hopefully kind of where your work is within the 4, especially right now as you're planning or thinking or future tripping. So my hope is that it will help you. So I'm going to just start with part 1 of this belief system, which is just a very simple, all of these are 4 pretty simple statements. One is, I get to choose. I get to choose. The reason I picked get to is very, very intentional, right? I think so often, and again, this is one of the reasons I picked it for the new year, because I think it's really a beautiful time to say, who cares what happened last year? New, fresh, blank slate, right? Like new chapter, new start, let's go. And I just think the energy around the new year kind of serves us all. And I really encourage you to, again, pick this up in Q2, pick this up in Q3. You can, I added a new offer last year in like mid-January. Like you don't have to wait until the new year. But it's a great thing to just keep coming back to. So I get to choose is kind of a new year vibe, right? I think a lot of people are kind of like, yeah, okay, I get to choose. Like, what do I want this year, right? This is the time of year we ask ourselves that question. What do I want? And so if where you're sitting is, I'm just still stuck in last year's brain or mindset, right? This is a great opportunity just to remind yourself that you just get to choose. Nothing in your past, nothing in your business last year affects this year unless you want it to. You're just always at choice. And I think being in a position to be the owner of a small business is actually like such an honor and such a privilege. And we sometimes, when we're focused on like just trying to get where we're trying to get, we kind of forget like what a beautiful position that we are sitting in, and we literally got to choose to create these businesses in the first place. And so if you chose to create this business in the first place, you definitely can choose where to take it this year. And so if anytime you're feeling out of control, I don't even want to say out of control, but like not in control, right? Like when you're dealing with the hard stuff, right? Difficult clients, somebody that says they're going to buy and then they haven't yet, team member dynamics, all kinds of things, right, that we just have to deal with. I think one of the times that we feel the most in our businesses is when we don't feel like we have a choice, or we feel like something is not in our control. And no, I'm not saying you can control everything and all humans that come into contact with you. But I think that's when we start to lose, like, that's where coaching language, like we would all say, you know, like, this is where it's like, you have to make sure you're not losing your power, you're stepping back into your power. If that language doesn't serve you, that's fine. You don't need to be a coach, but it's about your agency. It's about your belief system and your own responsibility and your own ability to change your life or to change your business or to create whatever it is that you want. And I probably don't have to harp on this one too much because most entrepreneurs had to believe that at some level to be able to create a business, you know, out of nothing in the beginning, or in the first place, I should say. But again, I just find that so often when we feel annoyed, stressed, frustrated, bothered by anything in our business, oftentimes there's something happening underneath the surface where we're like, I don't get to choose. Shoot, I have to do it this way, or I have to deal with this person, or right? I get to choose is just a great North Star to keep coming back to when you're setting, you know, New Year's resolutions and plans for your business, but also when you're just dealing with a difficult situation. Okay. Let me know if there's any questions, and I'm going to move on because this is just sort of like the foundation. This isn't rocket science, but it's a really good reminder this time of year. Yeah, and I think the only other thing I want to say is that I think when we feel like we aren't in control, right, or we aren't in our power, I think sometimes we can even lean, this is probably a really strong word for most of our experiences, but we lean sort of more towards that victim mentality of like, I'm a victim to the client that's being difficult, or I'm a victim to whether or not this person signs up to work with me, or I'm a victim to my team dynamics or whatever is happening, or like, I don't know how to get the right support. And one of the things I've been working with 3 clients, I think right now, they're hiring their first person, either hiring their first person ever or the first person in a role that's never existed before. And so often when we get in there, it's like we have to ask for support. I am a choice, right? I get to choose how I want this to go down, and I get to communicate that to my team member. But if that process or that onboarding or that interaction between me and that team member is challenging, it can start to just feel like you're not in your power. And that's where we kind of move a little bit more victim-y side of things, right? So this can just kind of help you come back to like, hold on. I got it. I get to choose. I'm at choice. I'm in charge here. I'm in charge of myself, at least. And I think it helps if you're saying like, if you find yourself pivoting, if you find yourself scaling, like scaling is so different in your business than growth. And what worked to get you to where you are now is oftentimes, not all of it, but like a good portion of what got you here will not get you there. And we have to unlearn stuff and learn new things, right? And reminding ourselves that we have choice. I just have choice I choose now to learn this new thing so that I can get my business where I want to go. So it can happen when we want to work more or we want to work less, right? I get to choose. Do I want to work more? Do I want to work less? I get to choose. I can fire a client if it's not working, right? I can fire a team member if it's not working. I don't believe in like jumping to that conclusion very quickly, but these are always choices that you have. And sometimes just remembering that you have an out, even when you don't use it, can be more empowering and kind of get you back into choice. Okay. I'm just going to check the chat and then we're going to move on to number 2 here. It's a great reminder that we have the power to choose 100%. And I just think sometimes we forget that, right? When we're in the moments. Okay. I just want to make sure there wasn't anything else I wanted to say about that. So number 2 is sort of built on that, right? If you imagine sort of like foundationally, I get to choose, right? If you're like, oh yeah, I sometimes don't even realize that I have the choice, right? Then that might be where your work is. The next piece is, so number 2 is, I trust myself to choose. So first is I get to choose, like I even have a choice. Number 2 is I trust myself to choose. And this is often the piece to come back to when you find yourself just spinning in indecision and you're like, I haven't made a decision and I just can't get there. I can't finish, am I going to choose Avenue A this year or Avenue B or even this quarter, right? When we get stuck in indecision, oftentimes we're just not trusting ourselves. Sometimes we don't have enough information. Sometimes there's all kinds of reasons why we get stuck in indecision, but I find often that, again, these two build on each other. First, I need to believe that I even have a choice and remind myself to get myself back in there, right? Secondly, do I trust myself to choose, right? I think that's where a lot of times people get stuck in New Year planning or any sort of planning. It doesn't have to just be New Year's. Because we all kind of have our own tendencies around like New Year's planning, for example. So some people are like, I'm going to make $40 billion this year and I'm going to, quadruple my following and I'm going to 10x this and I'm going to hire 8 people and I'm going to, right? And we just like go so big and like there's nothing wrong with dreaming big, but I think some people are going to err on that side of things, right? And then they go hard and they're like, oh my God. And then like by February, they're like, need a rest and they got to take a vacation and then they got to start back over in March, right? I've done it. So I think some people have a tendency to kind of just go hard, right? And to like, just pick the first thing that they decide to do and run. Right. And there's a little piece of that where you do trust yourself, but because I want to go back. So then the other way that we can operate, if that doesn't resonate with you, if you're like, you're not describing me, sometimes we're even afraid to plan because it's like, I don't even know what I can commit to for a whole year. I don't even know what my word of the year, like, oh my God, that's going to be 12 months of me thinking about this. Well, I don't know. That was me a few years ago. I only just started doing word of the year last year. No, 2 years ago. 2 years ago. Because I finally found a word that felt right. So there's no rules here, but I think sometimes we look at New Year's planning and we're just like, that's too big, right? And so if that's you, strategic side note, most people don't plan their whole year. Like if you have multiple like programs that go at certain times of the year and you run each one once and so you have 3 and then it kind of makes sense that like you kind of already know what you're doing at the end of the year. It's like one now, one in the summer, one in the fall. But most people, I think, can get by with a really solid, like 1 to 3 month or 3 to 6 month plan. Like you do not have to know everything. But I find that sometimes we just get stuck there because we can't trust ourselves to choose, to commit, to know enough, right? It just feels too big. Just like a big project, it feels hard to start. But also sometimes this time of year, maybe we don't think we can have what we want. And so it's almost like back to that piece of, do you even trust yourself? Do you even believe you have a choice, right? Well, if I can't get what I want, then why am I sitting down choosing and planning out this year if I'm not going to get what I want? Or sometimes we say things like, well, sure, I can get what I want. I know that I have a choice, but I can't really have this until I have this and until I have this. So like maybe by the end of this year, I'll be happy, right? Or maybe by the end of the year, I'll get what I want, right? And so sometimes there's other things operating, right? But again, I just like to kind of bring those back to, if you have these tendencies, if you're looking at New Year's planning in any of these ways, where can you find yourself in those 2 pieces? I get to choose, you're forgetting you have a choice, and then I trust myself to choose. There's something else I wanted to say about that. And so this gets to what I'm not going to talk too much today, but I may do another live about this because I'm just really big on decision-making styles, decision-making processes, because if you don't trust yourself, right, then you're going to make a choice, but you didn't really trust yourself to make that decision in the first place, so you're more likely to change it in like 3 minutes than you are to like take action on it and like see it. Sorry, my throat is really dry today. Take action on it and see it through. Right? Because you didn't really trust yourself to begin with, right? So something I often like to think about is what hat am I wearing today in my business, right? So many of us are wearing That's why that business called themselves 17 Hats, right? Because we're all wearing 17 hats. Even if you have a team, you're still wearing 17 hats. And so one of the things that I like to do is really be clear in the moment when I'm working, like, who is working right now? Like, what hat am I wearing? Am I the coach right now? Okay, I just need to be the coach right now. I don't need to be the person who decides what strategy we're going to use next month, right? I also don't need to be the person that writes content right now, right? I'm just focused on my person in front of me. That's actually quite easy for me, but most people I know. But then where we find other places is like, I'm writing content because I said I'm going to post 3 times a week, and so I'm sitting down to write content, and I kind of don't want to. So then I'm a little bit like looking at that CEO who made the decision, and I'm like, I don't know that I trust her to make that decision, because right now I'm sitting here executing. I don't really want to do that, right? But if when we're wearing that CEO hat, we can really get, and this is a practice, like this is not, I think some people come into this world totally trusting themselves, but I think most of us have to really work on that and practice that. And over time, when big things come up, we tend to like not trust ourselves as much. And I just want to really normalize that. But if you can work on trusting yourself, trusting the CEO of your business, AKA you, to make good decisions, then when you're the person who's executing and you're the person writing content and you're very aware that you're wearing that hat, what I like to do is kind of say, I don't really want to do this right now, but the CEO asked me to write this post, so I'm just going to write this post. Because the CEO knows what she's doing. She made a strategic decision. I was there. And then I'm just going to execute, right? But when I don't want to write it and I want to of course, we can always let ourselves off the hook. You don't have to post 3 times a week. Like, there's no rules here, right? Of course, take a break, take a vacation, all these things. There's times when we need to not follow through with that, right? But if we're struggling with consistency, for example, which is something that I think a lot of people struggle with, or we're struggling with trusting ourselves, this is a really great exercise to get in the habit of, because that action breeds that trust for yourself. Just like if you're not feeling confident because you've never done something before, sitting around and talking and thinking about it is only going to take you so far. Sorry, you got to jump and go. And once you start moving and doing it, that will build your confidence. You don't get confidence before you do something, right? And so same here, if you're practicing on trusting yourself, then get into that action of, I'm going to take action on that decision that I made, and I'm going to prove it to myself that I believe in myself, right? That I trust myself to make that decision, right? I know I'm like throwing multiple personality disorder into the mix, but like, really, what hat are you wearing? Who are you today? What role are you playing? And how can you just really honor that role and trust one another? When I make that decision as a CEO that person's going to write content for me, I also trust that she will write content for me, right? I'm not going to ask her to write 14 posts a day, because I know that that's not realistic for her, right? But so then when I'm executing, I can look back at that CEO and go, okay, well, she told me to write this, so I'm just going to sit down and do it, right? The other piece that I like to suggest around decision making, and again, I could do, and actually I think I still have an old masterclass on my website about decision making. So if that's a thing that you'd like, you can either find it on my website or just ping me and I'll send it to you. Yes, I do. It was called Strategic Decisions. But the other thing that I like to recommend if you're struggling with trusting yourself is so I'm really big on priorities. Really, really big on priorities. I think it's so important, because we cannot do everything. You can do everything, but you cannot do everything, right? And I think competing priorities is one of the biggest challenges that entrepreneurs face, whether they're aware of it or not, because everything feels important. And that's true, right? And I often say to my friends and my clients who have kids, like, if you have more than one kid, both kids are important. But in certain moments, one kid gets the attention over the other one, right? Because one fell down and scraped their knee. I'm sorry, the other one has to wait. We have to go tend to that one, right? And it doesn't mean that the other kid's not important, right? Same in your business, but there's only one of us, right? And there's just always something else that's going to grab your attention, and it's your job to stay true to your priorities. And so When you make a decision, I'm going to prioritize business growth this year in my business, then that inevitably, the nature of saying yes to something and to prioritizing something means you're putting it at the top, means it wins out over other stuff, right? It means we're going to say no to something. Or it means we're going to back burner something. Or it means we're going to say, I had a speaking opportunity come down the pike last week. I really wanted to do it. It was a great opportunity. I do not have the time at the moment. They wanted to do it this month. It's just not an option. And so I really sat and thought, okay, this is a great opportunity. Do I want to make a change? I can totally make a change and move some things around to create space for this opportunity if it fits my highest priority. Absolutely. But it doesn't. It's kind of a long-term game. It's a great opportunity, and it's also something that's not going to go away. I don't have to record this thing now. I can do it in 3 to 4 months, and that would be fine. And so, but that helped me make the decision because it just did not serve my top priority at the moment. And so when we say yes to something and we truly honor it as our top priority or even top 3 priorities, inevitably, right, it's that whole saying yes to something means saying no to something else. And in business, it often means saying no. Sometimes it means saying no to money. Sometimes it means saying no to a great opportunity. Sometimes it means saying no to something you really, really want to do. But I trusted myself to make that decision. So I'm just going to follow through with my decision. And when you do those things, especially if you're working on trusting yourself, that's a really great opportunity to really circle back with yourself and realize what you just did when you said, I choose A as my top priority. Somebody asks me to do, I choose this as my number 1 priority. Somebody asks me to do something that would serve my 7th priority. And so I'm not going to fast track it right now. And I'm going to say no to that, which means you just re-said yes to your priority, your top priority, which means you trusted yourself, which means you know how to take action on that decision that you made, on that choice that you made, because you trusted yourself. And so I always like to kind of come back when a client follows through and takes an action to say no to something that's not that priority they decided. It's like, let's go back and just make sure we're dialing back in the fact that you do trust yourself to make a decision because you just followed through with that. So those are my 2 suggestions of when you're saying yes to something, what are you saying no to? And when the CEO decides something, can the execution person or the whatever, execution sounds like I'm killing someone, the person responsible for executing the task, when that person trusts the CEO to make that decision, those are some really great, just very simple, you could practice that every single day, right? Because you're always doing something. So I think those are great ways to really dial in and be just very intentional and aware of, I can trust myself and gather that evidence. Okay, before I go to number 3, does this make sense? And do you have questions? Okay. Okay, what was number 3? Oh, I started to go to the number 3. So I get to choose as number 1. I trust myself to choose is number 2. Number 3 is I commit to my choice by taking action on it. So that's the whole put your money where your mouth is, Livingston. Great, okay, cool. I think I have a choice. Awesome. And I trust myself to make a decision. Great. I make a decision, but it does me no good if when I get that speaking opportunity, I can't honor the original decision that I made, right? Or that I can't, we're going to get to what happens if you need to make a change, but let's just stay with what we're doing. I trust myself to make that decision. I trust myself to set my priorities. I am 100% clear about my priorities. And it actually makes it easier to say no to cool stuff because it just doesn't fit the now. It doesn't fit the top priority. And my top priority is so important that spending time on my 4th priority just actually doesn't feel good because I went through that process to make a clear decision. I knew what the trade-offs were. I knew when I said yes to one thing, I was going to say no to other stuff, right? And I was just signing up for that. So let me back up one more time to that decision-making process. I think if you don't know the trade-offs of your decision, spend some time identifying what that is. We can't know everything, right? We just have to make a decision based on what the best information that's in front of us. But if you just assume, this is going to sound so negative coming from a mindset coach, but I believe in reality. We really need to understand the repercussions of our decision. Because if we think there is a decision out there that is perfect, that doesn't come with any trade-offs or any downsides or any whatevers, like, I don't know any. But I know that there are decisions I've made in my business that I don't feel sad about the stuff that I'm not doing because I'm just so solid and clear about what I am doing. And there's too many choices out there. There's too many things to do. So identify what those trade-offs are. And when you can still go, I see these three, I'm sure there's more, but I see these three trade-offs and I recognize that these trade-offs come with this decision, but this decision's gonna get me blah, 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 blah. I'm so proud of myself for this decision. Then when inevitably somebody comes with when the trade-off happens or when somebody comes to ask you to do something else, it just makes it that much easier because you've already kind of pre-decided that when other things happen, you're not gonna do it. Is this making sense? Okay. But let me get back to taking action, right? So great that you made the decision, but if you just made a decision and you don't follow it up with any action, like your decision's just a decision. It's not really in effect, right? Taking action on that decision is putting it into effect. That's when like execution lady goes into place and starts doing stuff. And the reason I said it the way I did, how did I say it? I commit to my choice, and I commit to my choice by taking action, is because literally that's how you commit, right? So that also shows yourself that you trust yourself, right? I trust myself to make the decision. I also trust myself to follow through on that decision, which is really that commitment to a decision or to a New Year's resolution or to a goal or to an initiative or to a priority or to a new habit you want to create. These really follow these really serve all of those things. Okay. So we talked about like trusting the CEO to make that decision, right? When I'm in execution mode, I can just take that action because I already made that decision. I trust that CEO to make that decision. And I know that committing to that decision means I put it into action. The other example that I like just popped up this week with a client. We set up, how can I make this generic so it's not clear who it is? We set up, we made some changes in her offer and her strategy, so just some tweaks in her offer and her strategy in December. And then when we picked back up this week to sort of adjust, she had said, well, I took about 50% of the action that I said I would do. So I did this piece, it's moving, it started, that feels pretty good. But the other piece, I just can't bring myself to do it. But I decided in December that I'm gonna do it. And some of it's like just holiday, you can only just do so much in the time that we had in between. But we started talking about like, what's the sticky part? What's under there? What doesn't feel good? Because you made a very clear decision. Like that was, and it took us a little while to get to that point. So that final decision was like kind of like the last, I think that was like the last session of the year. And so it was like, well, was it the decision that still doesn't feel right? No, the decision is clear. Okay, so why are you struggling, right? She's wearing that execution hat. Why are you struggling to execute on the decision you made? So we played around with it, talked about it. And what really came out was she basically said, oh, I'm just not quite sure it's gonna work, right? She wasn't aware of that. That was just like kind of something that came up as we talked it through and as we just like dug in there trying to figure out what was happening. Right? But that's such a great example, right? When's the last time, like you probably know an example of when that happened to you where you made a decision, you're like, yeah, and then you're like, I just can't seem to do any more than make the decision, right? I can't seem to just take it any further. I can't seem to execute on it. And at the end of the day, it was like, well, I don't even know if this is going to work, right? Which just means it's a little bit more time. She just needs to spend more time. And this is where we're headed next, is we just need to revisit that decision so that her mindset can catch. It's like her strategic brain made the decision, but her mindset is kind of catching up to that decision that she made. That not only is this a good idea, but it's going to work. Because if we just don't think it's going to work, why in the world would we do it, right? And that's literally her subconscious mind driving her actions right now. She does not believe it's going to work. There's a piece of her that doesn't believe it's going to work. There's a piece of her that believes it's going to work, right? And so that's the work that we're working on right now. And I think that was such a great example of where you can have the best strategy in the world, but if your mindset isn't bought into that strategy, or that mindset, if you're not trusting yourself to make the decision, or if you're just struggling with execution, it's usually mindset. And that's one of the reasons why I, for years, cannot separate mindset and strategy. Like I don't know how to help people with their business if we can't talk about both, because they just go together so naturally. And I find it's also where people say, I don't understand why this is working, why this isn't working, right? Why can't I have the strategy, I made the decision, I have all the stuff. Why can't it's not working because I can't do it. Well, there's a reason, right? Sometimes that's when we know it's time to pivot. We're just not into it anymore. It's like an outdated sort of offer or an outdated what have you. But in this case, she just needed a little bit more time to dial in that decision and decide that it was going to work. And rather than pushing and forcing, hurry up and go do the other half of the work that we're going to do, because we at least acknowledged it, we're going to see what happens. We just decided, like, we're just going to see what happens this week. But that's just where the work is. The work is going back to that decision and catching her brain up to that and truing it up. Maybe we need to tweak it again so that she feels better about it. Okay. So I commit to my choice by taking action. That's where a lot of us, where the rubber meets the road. Like if you're stuck in indecision, it's more about, do I even think I have a choice? Is it going to work in the first place, right? And do you trust yourself to make the choice? And then can you execute on it? Can you move it forward? Okay, questions there. And then we'll go to there's a question in here I'd missed before, sorry. Do the best you can with the information you have. Then when you know better, you do better. Okay, I couldn't have said it better myself, and that's literally, it's like I planted you, because that's number 4. So number 4 is, like, come on. Number 4 is, I trust myself to assess as I go and course correct or adjust as needed. Right? When you have more information, when I know more, as you just said, I can make a different decision, right? And so, again, not to say that when we make decisions, we have to like be rigid and plan out 12, or even set up your New Year plan, right? You don't need to plan 12 months in detail out. Like you can, some people do that. I personally don't. Most of my clients don't. But that works for some people and for some business models. But that rigidity, most of us either want to change too quickly a decision, but we haven't taken enough action to give it a chance to quote my client, to give it a chance to work. Like it's not going to work if we don't give it a minute. Or we don't trust ourselves to make the choice, or we get stuck back in indecision, right? But that concept of I can just trust myself to make that decision in the beginning, to commit to and take action on that decision. And then, of course, anytime something changes or I have more information, or once I've lived it for a bit, I can always course correct and adjust. And frankly, I think, agility, resilience, adaptability is a skill to develop as a business owner that is only just now, finally, I've been saying this for 7 years as a change professional. I was in change management consulting before I started my business 7 years ago. And everybody was like, pick and stick, stay with your strategy, don't change anything. And I was like, hello, we have environmental changes. We have, as your work develops and you grow, you want to, like, have you ever seen anybody just have the exact same offer and strategy like for 8 years. Most people haven't. And again, not to say we want to change too fast. Most people are going to either tend to go, I'm going to try this, I'm going to spend a whole month on it, I'm going to build this whole thing, and then, yeah, it didn't work. Okay, so I'm going to try this, and I'm going to build this whole thing, and I'm going to try the thing for a month, and oh, yeah, that didn't work, right? Because we didn't give it enough time. Or we tend towards too rigid, I'm never going to change anything. Once I commit to something, I have to stay to it, and I can't change it. The magic is in the in-between, in the balance of that. I'm going to make a decision because I believe I get to choose. I trust myself to make this choice. And I would even say one of the mantras I've given my clients before pretty regularly is I trust myself to make excellent business decisions. You're welcome to steal that too. And then I'm going to follow through with action. And then, of course, as I go, I will test and adjust and reassess, right? That's always the backup. And I think I want to close actually. Yeah. I think I want to close actually with something that happened today. So I have a friend that I met networking. I think we decided we met in 2018, and we just she's been a very close friend ever since. Like it was just this, like one of those like love at first sights. And she and her children were here on a cruise ship until a couple of hours ago. We just dropped them back off, and that's why I'm wearing a t-shirt. And I came back here just in time for this. And her 22-year-old son is really one year away from graduating college and really thinking about his career and, that like pivotal moment of like adulthood, going out into the world. And, oh crap, I'm going to lose my train of thought. Well, he asked me if you had any advice. This is a side note, but this actually is a good way to close. If you had any advice for your 22-year-old self, what would it be? And I was like, dude, you're so wise for asking this question. You're only 22, And I really thought about it, and there were 3 adults in the car, and we all answered it differently and beautifully, and it was just a really lovely conversation. So, side note, ask yourself that question. I think it was such reflection for me. I hope it was helpful for him, but it was very interesting for me to think that through, because I had no idea what I was doing when I was 22, but I trusted myself. And I did some crazy stuff like move across the country with no job. And that's the first thing I did after college, scared my parents to death. But one of the things, I answered him in a few different ways, but one of the things I said was, when I decided to move across the country after college with just enough money to get me a month or two so that I could get a job, I wanted to explore the world, and that was my priority, right? And then I just said, I'll fit the job underneath that. The priority was to explore, if I just go back and use this example. And so back to I looked at the fact that I have choices when I'm graduating. I have choices. And what feels even more important than my career right now is just where I am. I'm a traveler at heart. I live on an island now. I wanted to explore. So I moved to California from the East Coast. And so that was my priority. So I believed that I got to choose. And it was just so funny because I was like, well, this is kind of what I'm talking about today. I believe that I get to choose. I trust myself to choose. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I don't have a job. I had like maybe $2,000. I moved with some friends. We just really threw ourselves into this. But I trusted myself, right? I took action, right? I moved across the country. I put my stuff in a van and I moved across the country. And then the last piece was part of the advice that I gave him, which is you don't have to have it all planned out. You don't need a 10-year plan. When I made that move to California, it was, I just know that I can trust myself to make this decision, and I'm going to, try to live there for like maybe a year and see what happens. And then number 4, I trust myself to test and assess as I go and make a change and course correct if I need to. And that was how I trusted myself to go do something that a lot of people advised me not to do, but it was 100% the right thing to do. Quite brave in hindsight as a 22-year-old. But I think, again, because I basically followed these mindset pieces and I trusted myself to say, you don't have to live there forever. You don't have to buy a house. You don't have to find the best job of your dreams. I just wanted to go and explore. So my top priority was covered. I trusted myself to make that decision. I'm not saying it was easy. There were millions of trade-offs. Millions of trade-offs. But I just chose it every single time. And then I knew that I could course correct as I went. I stayed for 3 years. So anyway, I wanted to close with that because one, I just thought it was a great question I wanted to pass along. But two, it was just a great example of what we just talked about. And I think this is not easy. Trusting yourself, running your own business, following up with action, like it's all, on you. One of the reasons that I said something to my business coach the other day about like, there's just all this stuff. I just need somebody else to come in here with me and see what's going on, right? There is a lot. But when you keep coming back to, I just know I have a choice and I just know that I can trust myself to choose, and then all these other pieces, everything just, the chaos starts to soften. And it also puts you back into a mindset of, great, what am I going to choose? How am I going to get there? What action am I willing to take, right? It puts you in a good mindset of strategic planning, right? Of making good choices for your business, of making excellent business decisions. And this is a process, this is a practice. Okay, I am going to stay on if there are any questions. I hope this was helpful. My encouragement to you, as I said in the beginning, is that obviously all four of these kind of go together, but hopefully you're able to see within these four, like maybe which one's sort of up for you right now, right? Or which one has been up for you? Which one is like your nemesis? Where's your work? Hopefully somewhere in there you were able to see. Or if you're like, actually, I've got all this, I hope that was really validating for you, that like, these are not the problems that you need to solve in your business and mindset. And maybe that will just remind you of how good you're doing, because I find so often that we just don't see ourselves. That's why I think that 22-year-old question, like I got really proud of my 22-year-old self, when I was telling that story. But we don't always see ourselves in that light, right? Because we're just in it, right? We're doing it. We're in it. But to have that, to be able to reflect back on that and to be able to look at yourself and say, I just listened to this for 52 minutes and I really got that stuff. That's like wherever it is that you've got it, like pat yourself on the back, integrate that, sit with that, ponder that, take that in, because that's half the battle. Okay, I'm just going to check the chat. I will turn off the recording, and then if you want to hang out for a few minutes and ask questions, you can. Okay, all right. We will see you back here in 2 weeks.
Recording.